Now I'm going to thank my sponsors. Wala pala akong sponsor. Welcome to Riot Design webinars, and we are on episode 1, which is about the basics of publication design. I am Engineer Adrian C. Macalalag, and I'll be your instructor for this session of the very first, again, episode of Riot Design webinars. So what will we get from here, from this lecture? So we'll actually be dividing it into 5 parts, and those 5 parts are as follows: design fundamentals, color theory, typography, layout and composition, branding and identity. So design fundamentals. So of course, very fundamental in any kind of design work is of course a line, a shape, form, texture, and balance. So a line is a geometric figure that connects 2 points. In design, we have to be mindful of the weight, color, texture, and style of our lines. Here's an example. So we have Pinoy Travel Freak, and we have 2 logos here. The first one on the left is composed of very geometric type of lines. Those are very neat and of course of uniform weight. Whereas on the other side, or on the right side, we have this caricature and of course handwritten type. And if you could really look at it, there is a sort of difference from the two. And on the left side, you can see that it's very formal, while on the other side, it's kind of a candid and friendlier look. Now, for shape. A shape is any two-dimensional area with a distinct boundary. Shapes can either be geometric or organic. So these are example of geometric shapes put into use. And on the left side, we have the tech record. And the tech record here makes use of circular thumbnails for the articles. And at the bottom is the rectangular banner photo. And if you would look at on the right, it's quite similar with Instagram, wherein it makes use of squares and circles for the photos. Form. When a shape transforms into 3 dimensions, it is now called a form. These can come from the real world through photographs, or these can be implied using shapes and colors. So we have here an article, or rather a magazine spread of the Augustinian Mirror, and we have here the artwork showcased is by Harold A. Montiel on his way of becoming an architect. So we can see here in this photo that it makes use of just color and various shapes, and because of the colors and shapes being used, we can see a certain level of depth. And in fact, if you can see here, it's 3-dimensional. The car, the waiting shed, and of course the shadow cast by people kind of shows that depth. So that's how you make use, or how you imply your form. You make use of colors, and then you darken it, you lighten it to show the depth. Now, texture. Texture is the physical quality of a surface. Similar to form, it is 3-dimensional, and it can be realistic or implied. So just like this magazine spread, you can see here that texture really plays a good accent in your magazine spread. And of course, any type of photograph would really accent the texture and everything. It's just giving life to your magazine spread, because it adds texture, it adds imagination of what your article is talking about. Now, next will be balance, and balance is defined as the equal distribution of visual weight. These are usually played along by color, size, number, and negative space. So right here we have photographs of my various travels. So starting from the top left, going clockwise. So first would be here. You can see the statue and the monument. These are in Bangkok, Thailand. And if you can see, the visual weight is actually found on the edges of the photograph. So on the right side would be the statue, and on the left side would be the monument. And next up, we have this photograph of Bayon Temple in Siem Reap, Cambodia. So if you will divide this photograph into 9 equal shapes using a grid, following the law of thirds in photography, you would see that the accent, or I mean the focus of the photograph, is found on the tuk-tuk or the tricycle on the bottom left, and the Bayon temple on the top right intersection of the imaginary grid. So it kind of forms some sort of balance, and it gives us focus where to look first in a photograph. The same goes with this one here at the bottom, wherein it features 5 people just enjoying a stroll all around in the temples there in Bangkok, Thailand. And then you can see that the photo is framed by the door, or rather, a frame is formed by the door with these 2 warriors painted on each side. So it kind of looks like there are 2 photographs, but there's just actually one, which is in the middle. And so it forms a sort of balance from left to right, and of course, from the inside element to the outside element. And the last photo in Tokyo, Japan, is showing Gundam being complemented by a very tall building on the right side. So just like the photo that we have in Bangkok on its top. So now we move along to color theory. So in this portion now we will talk about hue, saturation, value, and color harmony. So the HSV model, or the hue saturation value model, so it's composed of, yeah, the hue, which is another name for color, and it refers to the location of a color in a color wheel or spectrum. So that's hue. Saturation, on the other hand, is the intensity of the color, whether it is bright or subtle. So if it is very bright, or if it is very dull or subtle, that's saturation. And when you add certain blacks or whites to the color, that is what we call value. Because value adds another set of customization by adding blacks or whites to the color. So we now have these 3 basic colors that I'm showing you: red, blue, and yellow. And as a review, if you mix red and blue, we have purple. We mix blue and yellow, we have green. And if you mix yellow and red, we have orange. Yeah, so that's it. And then when we mix those again with their adjacent colors, we will have more colors, of course. And that kind of forms our color wheel. So with that color wheel, we can now define various types of color harmonies. And the first one that I'll be talking about is monochromatic color scheme. And for a monochromatic color scheme, we just choose one color from any hue in the color wheel, and then we add some black or white to add value and to have different sets of colors, just like what we have here. So first off, our first example is this one, another spread from the Augustinian mirror. This time we will be using purple, and then we added some white, and we also added some black. And in fact, black is also used for this spread in the text, and of course on other parts of the illustration. So if you can see here, it's just purple everywhere, but it has different shades. And of course, because of those different shades, we can have various accents, and it just goes along with the magazine spread. Next would be analogous color scheme, and for analogous color scheme, it makes use of 2 to 3 colors. sometimes even 4. But for this one, actually, we're just using 3. We're using red, orange, orange, and yellow, orange. And for the yellow, orange, we added some shade of black to make that darker color of yellow, orange rather, as seen on the top right. So using that color scheme, we can have this, for example, for sample logos. You can see here that just those colors could actually create an illusion of form, just like the one on the bottom that wherein we can see a sort of a box because of the shades of red and shade of yellows and oranges. Next would be complementary color scheme, and for complementary color scheme, we choose two polar opposites of colors. So we have red and green, and then we add some white to form that light green color, and then we also added some black to the red to make that darker red color. So this one, for example, now makes use of blue and orange, which are also polar opposites. And if you can see here, we added some more white for the blue to make this teal light bluish color, and it is well executed here in this magazine spread. Next would be split complementary. Now imagine if you have this color, so from the red orange, the supposed color opposite it is blue green, but instead of using blue green, we will be making use of the blue and the green. So thus this kind of color combination. So one example that I have here is from this photograph wherein nothing is really purposely choreographed, but circumstances or natural situations just give us this kind of colors. So if you can see here, the roof and the side tarpaulins of this boat is actually a good example of split complementary where it makes use of blue, orange, and green. Now next would be triadic, and triadic this time makes use of 3 equidistant colors in the color wheel. Now these 3 equidistant colors, or rather the term equidistant means that each of the color or hue is found at equal distances from each other. So just like here, we have red, blue, and yellow. And of course, we can customize it using the value and added some whites or some blacks to make our color palette, just like what we have here. And among those examples that I have is these two, and you can see here a very nice execution of purple, orange, and green for this artwork. And then on the other side, we also have red, blue, and yellow for this magazine cover of the Augustinian Mirror way back in 2013, which won first place in the regionals and nationals. I was part of that. Proud. Anyway, next would be typography. So typography now is actually a complicated thing to discuss, but of course, we will just run through on some terms and how we could use them so that we will be more knowledgeable of how to use these fonts and maybe some do's and don'ts, because there's actually a lot of do's and don'ts in typography, and we just need to go along and understand these terms. So serif versus sans serif. So I'm sure you're familiar with Times New Roman. It's very overused as a font, and I'm sure that you also know Arial, which is also very overused if you're into writing letters and etc. So serif is like this font. So if you can see, there are actually various accents on the tips of the letter, and if we cut those off, so if you can see those excess parts, if we cut them off, it will now form into a sans serif font. So going back, serif, sans serif. If you can see the difference, then good. Now for display fonts, these are best used only for special occasions or maybe for accentuating things, and it's better used for just titles or short phrases, because if you would use it as body text or the text all over your article, it might look like a big mess, or it might not look quite pleasing when you reduce the size. So these are display fonts for a purpose. So we have black letter types, which is like this one, Old English, or fancy. It can be fancy, yeah. Or full script, like this one. This font looks like somewhat taken from the Thai alphabet. And of course, script. So if you can see here, you wouldn't really want to have these letters shown in every word. It would be distracting, and it might be hard to understand. Now, another term that is very important is kerning. So, kerning is actually the spacing of various characters, and if you will be absent minded in this kerning, and if you wouldn't care, without kerning, it might look like something found on screen right now, which is chemming. Because, of course, there's no proper spacing in between characters, and it might blend in and will look like chemming. The next one is with kerning. So you can see now the distinct space between the R and the letter N. And of course, you can see the real or the actual word, which is kerning, not chemming, like the one found on the top. And lastly, another term that we have to be familiar of in typography is leading. So leading is actually the space between the bottom of two lines of text. So as shown here, I cannot really illustrate it more, but I hope it's self-explanatory on the illustration. And so here are the do's and don'ts in typography. So always, and please always, do not stretch your font. It's possible to stretch your font, but it doesn't mean that if it's possible, you will do it. There are a lot of possible things that we can do in life that shouldn't be done anyway. And that's a mistake if ever we will stretch those fonts. And also, we have to make sure that the font is properly oriented with the message, because just like this photo here on the right side, it has the same message, but it doesn't really have the same message now with those kinds of fonts. Now, next, again, it's just another emphasis that we have to make sure that the text are not stretched at all times. It's crazy. I mean, when you stretch a lot of fonts, it will just be a mess in your overall work. And Arial. If you're a designer, I am very sure that Arial is just for letters and not really for a lot of things. But for me, I use Arial as an exception for PowerPoint presentations, because sometimes there'll be compatibility issues, and Arial is a savior because it's almost available at any computer. And of course, Comic Sans, never ever use Comic Sans in anything right now. I mean, it's no longer 1995, it's 2020, and yeah, after this quarantine period of COVID 19, and you're still using Comic Sans, oh my god, that's crazy. Now, these fonts, please do not use them under all circumstances. I don't know why these were even invented, but yeah, these fonts are like, you can be skillful when these were invented, but right now I don't think that they're appropriate in absolutely anything. Maybe the word circumstances here, the font being used, could be used for for display purposes, but yeah, maybe just for display purposes, but not at any kind of publication. It's gonna be wild and crazy. And another one, my favorite, I mean, this has gone to almost all of my presentations in the past, because why not? Factory art feeding families. But I'm very sure that when you look at it first, You saw the word fart, not factory. Guilty? Well, yeah. So I'm actually guilty, and this one is gold for all the memes on typography. This one also went a lot of rounds in social media, and as a designer, I would really think that maybe this was done in purpose to get more attention. But I do know that this issue was already resolved. And yeah, I just wanted to show you what you shouldn't do because it's going to mark history just like these. Now, layout and composition. So for layout and composition, we'll just be talking about some um, terminologies that you can use. So first, of course, is proximity. And proximity is the use of visual space to show relationship of various elements with one another. So like this one, this is a calling card that I've done, but this is not actually what I did, but just to just to illustrate how a mess it would look if you just crunch up everything in one place. So it's very distracting to look at. So what I did actually with this mess is to organize the information into various parts of the calling card, because if you can see the top right part of this calling card, there's a lot of white space, and yeah, that's wasted space. So why not take advantage of it? So this is now the revised version. All the text from the previous one is still here. And I divided it into these three blocks. So the top part, or the yellow part, shows us Honda Car Cebu Incorporated, and of course their branches. Well, it's found in Cebu, Mandaue, Cagayan de Oro, Negros Occidental, Iloilo, and of course their membership in the Ayala group of companies. Then at the bottom, of course, is the name of the calling card owner. So for here, for example purposes, we have Juan B. de la Cruz, sales manager. Then at the bottom is the contact details and the address. Yeah. So that's how you organize. Now, white space. White spaces are negative spaces which occur between each content, between lines and outer margins. So what we have here is actually the table of contents of the Augustinian mirror, and we also have about the cover and erratum at the bottom. So if you can see, there's actually a lot of white space because one, maybe there's just nothing else to put in, and then another reason could be possible is that we just have a lot of pages and we're rich enough to just waste it all for white space. And the third, and well, this is actually the most important of all, we want the reader's eyes to rest. Now, I know that we pay a lot for printing and everything, but you have to also pay for the white space, and of course for your readers to also have a resting place where if ever they read a lot of things. So just like this one, it's organized and we utilized a lot of white space. And overall, you can see here in this magazine spread that there's actually a lot of places where you could rest your eyes. Another one, or another example, is this one. And this article actually has some graphics and some infographics at the bottom. And if you can see, there's also another advantage that we have with white spaces. If we have a lot of white spaces, we could encourage readers to read more. Because if you would look at it at a glance, you will not really think that this article is already about 1,000 words. Yeah, it's about 1,000 words, but it doesn't look like that because we arranged the text and we gave out a lot of white space, and we even did a sort of infographic at the bottom of page 15. And if you can see, if you're lazy to read, maybe you could just skip and then you just read the infographic below. So at least we held on to the reader. the reader had something to read, even though the reader is in a hurry. Now, alignment. Alignment is the arrangement of your text and and other content with a specific reference of either left, centered, or right aligned. So this one is an example. So this is actually my portfolio website, and if you can see here, everything is aligned to the left. So we have to be consistent, and we have to make sure that if ever we do experiment with alignments, it's very distinct and it's also consistent. Because, sometimes you might put some things aligned to the left and then some things aligned to the right, and it would look like a mess instead of, making sense. And of course, if ever, like for example, you have a magazine spread, and you have a lot of text going on, and then from left aligned you shifted to right aligned, it might confuse the reader if this is actually the continuation of your article or not. So we have to be mindful of that. Next would be contrast, and contrast is an element to ensure that one item is different from the other. So it is mostly used to create emphasis or catch the reader's eye. So this one, we have this kind of example. Um, this is actually a very nice artwork, and we wanted to emphasize it. And we also do not want that the article would, die with it because it's too beautiful. So what we did is that we added some color to the article, and if you can see here, there's this flesh color of the background in the article, and as you can see here, there's no really dominating effect on the photo because there's a sort of balancing out with the article because of the background. This one also shows us contrast, wherein the image is very dark, and then at the bottom we have this block of text. And because we want to unite all the elements of this magazine spread, we have to sort of superimpose some elements. And for this one, we have to superimpose the meteor in the image, and the meteor is almost coming out of the picture to unite with the bottom part, or the text. Next up would be hierarchy, and hierarchy assists the reader in navigating the contents of a certain piece. It shows them where to begin and where to stop. Now, for hierarchy, I'm sharing you this spread from the Augustinian newsletter. And if you can see here at the top, you will see editorial and opinion. Then, because of our flow of reading, we will be forced to read first this editorial article entitled The Cost of Human Rights. And then, of course, after we finished, we will be led to this article here at the right, entitled Kung Talagang Malaya. Then, of course, the least important part, although it's also important, will be found at the bottom, which is the staff box of the publication. So we have this kind of navigation because of making use of font, and of course making use of the direction of the reading of your reader. So we have three major blocks. So of course this one would go first, the cost of human rights, then this one, kung talagang malaya, and then at the bottom is the staff box. So that's how you lead your reader, by arranging these kinds of elements. This one is also an example of how you would lead your readers. And of course, we really acknowledge the fact that sometimes we are in a rush and we want just people to get a grip of the article. So there's actually a flow chart at the bottom that they can read, or maybe they could also go and just resort to that one on the top right part, wherein where to throw crash course. And if they do indeed have the time, they can read the article, and you have the choice. So that's how you would really invite your reader to read. You give them the choice. If they're fast, I mean, if they want information fast, they have infographics to resort to. And if they have the time or the luxury of time to read the article, they can do so. So I think this is the last part, branding and identity. So we will just be talking about logo, color, text, and images. So it's going to be a bit fast. And because actually, if you will be talking about branding and identity, there's actually a whole lecture for that because it's a long story. But to cut the story short, we will just go through this. So a logo is what identifies your brand. It can be a simple mark or icon, type design, or a combination of both, commonly called a logo mark. So over the years of my work, I have done a lot of logos already. Some are actually even familiar with you. And yeah, these are it. So it makes use of text. Some are just icons and some are just, just like this one, the tech record, wherein it just makes use of tech as a word. And then it's just a simple black box. Now, color is a powerful tool for your brand. It creates a sense of unity, and most usually derive their color from their logo. So, just like this one, so I actually do full time work as an engineer at the Department of Public Works and Highways. And of course, as an identity of DPWH, we make use of a lot of blues and oranges, even on our buildings, actually. Now, text. Text is the most expressive among elements of branding. It immediately sets the mood of the material. So, like this one, we have two examples. And if you can see here, the one at the top would be more formal, while the other one would be more candid. So, if you are actually trying to express a very serious message, of course, we would resort to that one on the top. But maybe if we are on a lighter mood or something, we can resort to the one at the bottom. Images. So images shape the way viewers perceive your brand. They come from photos, icons, and accents in your material. So this one is actually a magazine spread of the Augustinian Mirror, and it's quite laid back because it's way back in 2011 when I still am getting a grip of page design. So if you can see here, I'm not really that satisfied because if you could see, there are a lot of pictures and a lot of picture types. So we have an illustration at the bottom right, and then we have a CGI on the top left, and then we have stock images from the internet on the bottom left. And what is with the blue anyway? So if you can see here, if this is the kind of identity that you're trying to show, there is a sort of confusion, or maybe, you need to really work on how you would present things, because if this is how you would present it, I don't know if you would really want to read the article. So you actually are selling the article by giving it a good layout. So without the good layout, no matter how good quality your article is, it might not really catch your reader's eye. And we're all for visuals right now. This is like, we're 2020 and we have to be great and particular with visuals because visuals really sell things. So this one is a more recent spread of the Augustinian Mirror. So this is in 2016. So 5 years later, we're now at this kind of quality. Now, if you would see here, this is are actually images shared to us by Sir Gabs, and he's actually the Pinoy travel freak. So do follow him on Facebook and Instagram. He's a travel blogger right now, and he's a former editor in chief also of the USA publications. So if you can see here in this kind of spread, there's just a lot of things you can do if you have great photos. Okay, so you can see here. And then if you would go to the next page or next spread of his article, or an article about him, you can see here there's a lot of photos being spread. And because of these kinds of quality of photographs, you can see that you're just lured into reading the article. So organization and of course consistency in the photographs, as well as the harmony of the infographic and the article, is just going around and it invites you to read. So I think this is just my last example. If you want more, you can just, browse in my website, and other materials can be found there. So always remember though that crazy ideas are never crazy with fun and creativity. So this has been Ryan Macalalag, a freelance graphic designer, and thank you very much for tuning in to the first ever episode of Rayad Design Webinars. If you want, you can follow me at Instagram at Ilonggo Engineer, and Facebook at my Facebook page Rayad Design, and YouTube at my YouTube channel Rayad Macalalag. You could also visit me at my website www.rayaddesign.com. See you again soon. Thank you.